Police lights flared in my mirrors and guns came up before I could unbuckle. Traffic slowed. Phones lifted. An officer shouted my name and ordered me out like I was dangerous. He said my car was reported stolen, armed suspect, active case. I stayed still, hands visible, heat crawling up my neck. Across the median, people watched who should have intervened and didn't. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I asked him to check who filed the report and the timestamp. He looked at his screen, stopped typing, and his face changed. The radio crackled once, then went quiet. The officer lowered his voice and stepped closer, shielding me from the cameras. He said protocol required caution, not conclusions, and asked me to stay put while he verified. Another cruiser arrived. A supervisor spoke into a radio, tone clipped. I watched the small choices stack up. They chose safety over speed. They chose procedure over assumption. I thought about the hearing I was supposed to attend that morning. Probate court opens early. My grandfather planned it that way. He liked order. He liked receipts. He trusted systems that left trails. I had filed notices weeks earlier and confirmed attendance by email. My sister had gone quiet after that. The supervisor asked for my license again and my insurance card. He asked where I was headed. I answered without detail. He nodded and asked the first officer to run the timeline. The question mattered. Reports create gravity. Timing creates truth. As we waited, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not reach for it. I knew the pattern. When pressure rose, my sister moved fast and loud. She preferred spectacle. She had learned that confusion buys time. I remembered smaller moments that felt the same. Family dinners where plans changed after I arrived. Calls that ended when I asked for specifics. Documents described as formalities that never came back. Authority was always borrowed, never earned, and it leaned toward whoever spoke last. The supervisor returned and asked me to step out slowly. I did. The pavement was cold through my shoes. He asked if I had enemies. I said no. He asked if anyone stood to gain if I missed court. I said yes. He wrote it down. He told me the report listed my sister as the complainant, filed 40 minutes earlier, flagged urgent, claiming threats that did not exist. He told me the language used keywords meant to trigger a stop. He said it was convenient. He said it was sloppy. Across the road, a bystander filmed. Another looked away. I felt the old pull to explain, to soften, to make it easier for everyone else. I didn't. I waited. The supervisor spoke to dispatch again and requested a call back from the filing desk. He asked for the audio. He asked for the original form. He asked who approved the escalation. Someone had chosen speed over fairness. Someone had pressed submit without reading. Minutes stretched. Cars crept by. The first officer offered me water. I declined. I wanted my hands steady. When the call came through, the supervisor listened without interrupting. He asked one follow-up. He thanked the voice on the other end and ended the call. He looked at me and said the report would be reclassified. He said I was free to go. He added carefully that a false report is a crime. He said he would forward everything to the county. He said court would see the timestamps. He said systems remember. I drove away slowly, heart still loud, mourning intact. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was procedural. Someone trusted to be fair had chosen convenience, and another system had corrected it. I headed to the courthouse knowing this would not be the last attempt. I kept my speed legal and my thoughts narrow. Evidence works when it is plain. I parked, checked in, and sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom. Clerks moved files. A clock clicked. I breathed and waited, ready to let documents speak, certain the morning had already taught me how authority behaves under light. I felt watched but protected by process. Not people, for once this day alone. Inside the courthouse, the air felt steady in a way the roadside never could. Wood benches, low voices, a rhythm built to slow people down. I signed in and took a seat where I could see the clerk's desk. My sister arrived late, breathless, scanning the room as if searching for damage. When she saw me, her face didn't show surprise. It showed calculation. She sat 2 rows ahead and texted without looking down. My phone stayed dark. I watched how she interacted with the bailiff, how she leaned in, how she laughed too quickly. She had always done that with authority figures. Charm first, volume second. Details later. The pattern wasn't new. Growing up, she learned early that rules bent for confidence. Teachers believed her. Coaches excused her. If something went missing, the question found me first. I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who could wait. When decisions were made for convenience, they landed on me. When Grandpa's health declined, she took over the narrative. She spoke for him in rooms he wasn't in. She described conversations no one else heard. I asked for documents. She said trust mattered more. When I asked for timelines, she said I was being cold. The probate filings told a different story. Dates didn't line up. Witness names repeated. Emails came from personal accounts at odd hours. I printed everything and kept it in order. I never accused. I asked questions and wrote down the answers. The judge called our case. My sister stood first and spoke fast. She said Grandpa had promised her stewardship. She said I was difficult. She said urgency demanded action. She implied danger without naming it. I stayed seated until asked. When it was my turn, I handed the clerk a folder. I spoke only to identify exhibits. The judge read silently. He asked my sister who advised her to file the police report. She said it was precautionary. He asked why it claimed armed suspect. She said she followed guidance. He asked for proof. She had none. The judge looked at the timestamps. He asked why the report was filed minutes after I confirmed my attendance by email. My sister didn't answer. The room felt smaller. He continued reading. He asked about the missing acknowledgement page. He asked why the notary stamp matched a batch from another county. He asked why my sister's signature appeared on a form she said Grandpa signed. She said stress made things messy. The judge paused and addressed the clerk. He requested a referral to the county attorney. He said the hearing would proceed on the record before him. He said interference with court attendance was serious. He said the matter would be noted. My sister whispered my name. I didn't turn. Afterward, in the hallway, relatives gathered in clusters. Some avoided me. Some stared. My sister told them I was dramatic. She said I had caused a scene. I walked past and left, outside. The sun felt too bright. I sat on the steps and wrote down everything while it was fresh. Names, times, phrases. The way her voice rose when pressed. The way it fell when evidence appeared. This wasn't about one stop on the highway. It was about a habit of using systems as tools against people who stayed quiet. I had been quiet long enough to see it clearly. That afternoon, an email arrived from the county acknowledging receipt of the referral. It was brief. It was formal. It was enough. I didn't feel relief. I felt the weight lift just enough to stand straighter. The expendable role had depended on my silence being permanent. It wasn't. I drove home carefully, aware of eyes that might follow, aware of records that would. I locked my door, set my folder on the table, and began preparing for the next step, knowing that patterns only break when they are written down and read aloud by someone who cannot look away. The boundary was crossed the next morning, clean and undeniable. I received a voicemail from my bank's fraud unit asking me to confirm a wire request tied to my grandfather's estate account. The amount wasn't enormous. That was the tell. It was small enough to slip through if no one looked closely, large enough to establish a pattern if it did. I called back and asked for the request details. The representative read the submission notes. My sister had claimed urgency due to security concerns and referenced the police report from the day before. She said the funds needed to be moved to protect the estate. She used the right words. She used them in the wrong order. I asked for the timestamp. I asked for the authorizing document. I asked if the call was recorded. The representative said yes to all three. I asked her to freeze the transaction and email me the packet. She did. I didn't call my sister. I didn't warn her. I forwarded the packet to the county attorney's office with a single sentence. Attempted interference following a false report. I attached a clerk's referral from court. I added the bank's confirmation. I logged the call time and the case number. By noon, my sister was calling me. She left 3 messages. In the first, she sounded concerned. In the second, annoyed. In the third, angry. She said I was ruining things. She said I didn't understand how families handle crises. She said Grandpa would be disappointed. I saved them all. In the afternoon, a detective called. He asked to confirm facts, not feelings. He asked about our relationship history. I answered in dates and documents. He asked about the hearing. I gave him the docket number. He asked about the bank call. I gave him the case ID. He thanked me for being organized. That evening, my sister showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She rang the bell until a neighbor looked out. She said we needed to talk. I stayed inside. I told her through the door that communication should go through counsel. She laughed and said I was being dramatic. She said I always hid behind rules. I wrote down what she said as she said it. I noted the time. I noted the witness. I didn't respond. The next day, the county attorney's office sent a notice requesting additional materials. The tone had shifted. There were fewer pleasantries. There were more boxes to check. I filled them in. I realized then that I had stopped hoping she would choose differently. The need to belong had burned off quietly. What remained was attention to sequence. If I kept the record clean, the system would carry the weight. At work, I took a half day and didn't explain. I filed a change of address for sensitive mail. I updated passwords. I requested credit reports and set alerts. None of it felt dramatic. It felt necessary. A week later, the detective called again. He said the false report and the attempted wire would be bundled. He said intent mattered. He said using law enforcement to block court access crossed a line. He said he would recommend charges. He didn't promise outcomes. He promised process. That night, I slept without replaying conversations. The begging had stopped. The wondering had stopped. I understood that the harm wasn't personal anymore. It was documented. I placed my folder on the shelf and labeled it by date. I made tea and watched the streetlights come on. The calm wasn't relief. It was distance, earned by choosing accuracy over approval. I knew there would be fallout. I also knew it would not require my voice. I had crossed my own boundary and stayed on my side of it. The rest would follow the path already set by paper and time. The consequences arrived without ceremony. 2 weeks later, a certified letter came from the county attorney's office addressed to both of us. Mine asked for confirmation of availability. Hers informed her of an investigation. The language was plain. No accusations. No drama. Just timelines and statutes. The probate hearing went forward as scheduled. I sat in the second row and listened. My sister arrived late and took a seat behind me. She did not look at me. The judge reviewed the filings, noted the attempted interference, and continued the matter to allow the court to appoint a neutral administrator. He said it was standard when family disputes touched criminal conduct. He said it like a fact, not a punishment. Outside the courtroom, my sister tried to speak. I didn't stop. The bailiff stepped between us and asked her to clear the hallway. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The bank followed next. Their compliance team sent a notice confirming the freeze on estate accounts pending court direction. They thanked me for my documentation. They apologized for the inconvenience. I forwarded the message to the administrator. I did not reply to my sister's text. At work, nothing changed. I showed up, did my job, left on time. At home, I replaced the doorbell camera and updated the storage settings. I kept copies of everything in 2 places. I stopped checking my phone for her name. The detective called once more. He said the false report had been substantiated. He said the timing mattered. He said the bank call helped establish motive. He said the case would move to the prosecutor for charging decisions. He did not ask me how I felt. He asked if I had anything else to add. I said no. My sister's messages shifted again. She wrote long explanations. She blamed stress. She blamed grief. She blamed me for being inflexible. She asked to meet. I didn't answer. Silence wasn't strategy anymore. It was maintenance. Months passed. The administrator filed an inventory. The estate moved forward. The court issued orders that limited access and required signatures. Everything slowed down. That was the point. When charges were announced, they were narrow and precise. Filing a false police report. Attempted financial interference. The language matched the records. There was no spectacle. She pled to a reduced count and accepted conditions. I read the docket online and closed the tab. People asked if I felt vindicated. I didn't know how to answer that. Nothing had been restored to what it was before. Something else had taken its place. A quieter order. I stopped attending family events. I sent gifts when appropriate. I kept distance where needed. The administrator closed the estate the following year. I received what the court determined. I placed it into accounts with clear titles and clear rules. On an ordinary evening, I boxed the folder and stored it in a labeled bin. I kept the index page on top. Dates, names, case numbers. It felt complete. I didn't tell the story often. When I did, I kept it short. There was no lesson to offer, only sequence, cause and effect, paper and time. I walked the neighborhood after dinner and noticed how little attention that drew. Cars passed, lights changed, life continued. That was the ending I needed. Not loud, not clean, just settled.